spells.
All right, Ian Robb, new on the scene, doing very well up against Shuhei Nakamura. He's been here a long time and knows how to win. Let's find out which one takes down this match. I'm going to pass it on over to Cedric and Monty.
Maria, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. It is time to dive into Constructed here at Pro Tour Final Fantasy on day number 2. Cedric Phillips, Monty DeVuti. We're about to see Vivi get cast on both sides of the battlefield, partner.
Yeah, I think this is our first prowess mirror of the weekend. I believe, looking through the matches they've played, it's Shuhei's first prowess mirror of the weekend. He was lucky or unlucky enough, depending on how you look at it, to dodge it all of yesterday. Ian has played it once. He came out ahead. But definitely, given the number of prowess decks in the field, both of them have been relatively lucky in dodging the matchup up to this point.
Well, the luck may have potentially run out for both of them, as we are in an Is It Prowess mirror. You do see the opening hands here for both players. On the top is Shuhei Nakamura. The most Grand Prix top 8s of all time, I believe the number was 33. Also a Magic Hall of Famer, among many other accolades. For Ian Robb, a newcomer to the professional scene, but is breaking through in a very meaningful way. Made a top 8 at the Pro Tour earlier this year at Pro Tour Ether Drift, and is well on his way to doing so here once again. For those of you just joining us, the goal is 12 wins before the final round of the Swiss. If you get to 12 wins before round number 16, your tournament's over. You're done. We give you a couple more wins all the way through, right? And it's easy breezy beautiful, right? So get to 12. Ian's away. It's 2 wins away, from that magical number. And is off to a pretty good start here this game with a Torch the Tower and a Draycatcher.
Yeah, Shuhei had a 1-land hand. Unfortunately, that sleight of hand missed on finding the second land. So his turn 2 was quick and done, which is not the best. Of course, Shuhei was on a mulligan to 6 this game. Ian had the luxury of keeping the full 7, but was able to find the second land this turn. So with that Torch to the Tower, can deal with the Draycatcher and still follow it up with a second copy of the Storm Chaser's Talon. So definitely still not in the worst position.
Here is an out. Top card becomes the bottom card here for Ian. A new card coming.
Torch, 19.
And Torch will take care of the Otter. No land there for Ian. So 3 mana is a little bit of elusive here for both players. Looks like Shuhei does have another copy of Sleight of Hand, so that'll resolve. Top cards. There's a land there, an island. Other card's going to go to the bottom. Spell Pierce, stock up. This town certainly ain't big enough, is what Shuhei is working with. For Ian, he has a Cutter. That's going to get Spell Pierce. No third land once again. Shuhei, maybe it's time to do a little stocking up.
Yeah, I think that was a massive turn for Ian. If he was able to find the third land and play Vivi there, this would have been a completely different situation. But being stuck on 2 and playing that Quarry Steel Cutter into the Spell Pierce from Shuhei means that now Shuhei has relative safety to resolve the stock up while not being under pressure, and that means that he could be ready should the Vivi come down now, as we know he is with a copy of this town, a big enough in hand.
Yep, no copy of Storm Chaser's Talon there. There's a Quarry Steel Cutter there for Ian Robb. Again, still missing that third land. You can see Ian is a little blooded right now too, with 2 copies of Vivi, stock up, and a couple of 1-mana spells, but this would have been ideal for Ian to hit a third land drop maybe on that turn to get Vivi on the battlefield. Now pretty far behind, and given that he is a little further behind, given what Shuhei is deploying, that means that Shuhei's copy of this town ain't big enough is going to be very impactful in this game, partner.
Yeah, it's the last card in hand as Shuhei is able to deploy Draycatcher into Thundertrap Trainer, I believe, that turn, and just get more onto the board, find a Monstrous Rage, and this is just going to be a lot of potential sustained pressure coming out from Shuhei.
Yep. Looks like it's going to be Monstrous Rage on the Otter to trigger the Cutter, which means a prowess, a Monk token is on the way.
Yeah, and one of the issues now, as you can see from Ian's hand, is because he's been stuck on mana and forced to play his cheap spells, so he's not just treading water, he now has a hand that's 2 VVs and a stock up, but all of those cheap spells are gone. So the play pattern that you would typically like of playing VV and then playing your cheap spells is now being denied to Ian.
Yep, we agree. It's an opt. Top card for Shuhei is going to stay the top card, so that opt is done resolving. That die is going to represent prowess triggers right now for the Otter and the Draycatchling.
Yeah, into the Floodmaw, the card that got picked up there. Ian, of course, does know about this copy of Monstrous Rage that is in Shuhei's hand. That was revealed from the Thundertrap Trainer the previous turn. But the other cards, this down and big enough and the Into the Floodmaw, the all-important interaction spells here, completely in the dark.
Yes. Ian says no blocks. Let's see if Shuhei wants to get through a boatload of damage here or not.
Yeah, I would guess he wants to Monstrous Rage the Drake Catcher just to gain more incubation counters, being able to go further on the board here with these Drakes while he feels like he's in a position where he has completely turned the tide of this game from his... Remember, he missed his second land on turn 2 and just had to say go. From that position to now, it has been completely in Shuhei's favor, very much heavily due to the fact that Ian himself missed on that third land for so many turns.
Shuhei doing a little bit of counting here.
Yeah, of course, Drake Hatcher does have prowess, so Shuhei is considering playing another spell, getting one more trigger onto that, but that would require him to put the shields, quote-unquote, down, and I think it is reasonable when Ian is playing a list that has 4 copies of VV and was stuck on 2 lands for a while, that Shuhei can put him on at least 1 copy of the Legend in hand.
Yeah, I think it's pretty easy to deduce what's going on with Ian, given the lack of mana earlier in the game. As you said, you can probably deduce the information that there's at least 1 VV, 2 maybe a little more difficult, but some combination of VVs and stock-ups would make some sense, and that's exactly what's going on. You see River Pyre Purge and Into the Flood Mauler, the cards there from the stock-up.
I believe he did also pick up a copy of Wild Ride as well off of that stock-up, if I'm not mistaken. So that is a potential way for Ian to try to come back into the game. Of course, we know that Shuhei has 2 interaction spells in hand and the ability to make some Drakes here. So he is very much on the plan of, I'm going to just kill you next turn before any shenanigans can happen. I don't think you're 20ing me here because I have these bounce spells.
Here's Into the Flood Maw. Looks like a couple of Drakes, and then this is going to be on the stack. A couple of prowess triggers, of course, as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if Nakamura has a response. Looks like the Drake Hatcher is going to be bounced, which means the monster's roll token is gone. It looks like 8 damage is going to come through, so Shuhei falling down to 12. Looks to be confirmed. End step. I have bounce spells. This town, bounce this, do that. And that is going to do it. Shuhei Nakamura is going to win game number 1 here over Ian Robb. The prowess mirror can be fast and furious, and that is a very good example of that as players are flinging spells back and forth at what appears to be a record pace. But in the end, the Hall of Famer is up 1.
Yeah, Shuhei, you know, there were a few years where we weren't seeing that much of him, but he started coming back to the Pro Tours about 2 years ago, and definitely since then, you know, he has been doing his best to just remind people, hey, did you forget about me? Because I'm still here. And he has been in that contention piece. He's been top 16, near top 8 so many times in this time. And once again, now he's just pushing his way forward through a tournament.
Shuhei, don't worry. I'll never forget about you. That's not going to happen. For Nakamura, it's a stock up, a Thundertrap Trainer. This town ain't big enough. And a couple of cantrips there in sleight of hands, plural, and an opt, alongside the mountain that was just played. For Ian Robb, you see Quarry Steel Cutters, plural, along with the one that's on the battlefield. Looks like a stock up and opt, a Torch the Tower, and a River Pyre Purge, and it looks like an Abrade has been added to the hand. So 3rd mana not going to be an issue this game, perhaps, as we see an opt, though we are updating our cards in hand graphic as we go. So maybe the 3rd land, well, we'll find out soon enough if the 3rd land is in hand or not. For now, it's an opt that's on the stack. And this town ain't big enough says, get this Quarry Steel Cutter out of here. The response is a Torch the Tower, trigger the prowess on the Otter, get the Monk on the Quarry Steel Cutter, and now here is the opt. Top card becomes the bottom very quickly here for Robb. New card coming. And it's going to be an attack here for 3. And there is no 3rd land. Okay, so there you go. That question's been answered.
Yeah, I was beginning to think that 3rd land was fake because had there been a 3rd land, I think Ian was heavily incentivized to just go for another Steel Cutter that turn and then followed up with the spell triggering both. So we were leaning that way, and that's a lot better for Shuhei because if Ian was able to get 2 Steel Cutter triggers that turn, things could have been disastrous.
Yeah, we do agree. So the 3rd land is problematic here for Ian Robb, a 2nd game in a row. Quarry Steel Cutter and just passing the turn here for Nakamura. And much like that last game, as you see an Abrade going to take care of that Quarry Steel Cutter, Ian's hand is a little bit gutted up as far as mana costs are concerned, because this game, it's multiple 2 mana spells along with a 3 mana stock up. So multiple spells in a turn, as things currently stand, still going to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, I think that was definitely the previous turn, the sigh of relief turn for Ian, where he had to be stuck a bit on mana and pass the turn to Shuhei, and Shuhei's only play was the Steel Cutter, pass without getting a trigger, playing right into the Abrade. So that's as good as you can hope for in Ian's position while you are behind. And now this turn is where Shuhei could have put things away, and once again, just the Thunder Trap Trainer here has Ian breathing a bit of a sigh of relief, I would say, in his seat.
The trigger here from the trainer. You see Nakamura is going to take a copy of Into the Flood Maul. Rest are going to go on the bottom, so that is all taken care of. And now the follow-up will be a Storm Chaser's Talent. Otter on the way, and we're going to head back Ian Robb's way.
I believe that was an opt being found.
The struggle is real in that third land. Top card becomes the bottom one very quickly. Corey Steel Cutter missing. And Mountain is the fine there off of the op. So the third land's finally here. There's a Mountain, there's a Cutter, Trigger Prowess, Monks and Otters, Given Beat Downs. It'll be into the Flood Maul. There's a double. Okay, so one thing that Shuhei does there very nicely is clean up that battlefield, that's for sure.
Yeah, just being able to make sure that you can get everything off of the board there and keep your life total not high, but relatively healthy is good. The fact that there is another Corey Steel Cutter now down for Ian, that's a little concerning, especially because looking at Shuhei's hand, he doesn't have any interaction right now. I think Shuhei is in a position where he has to consider, can I afford to run out of stock up here, which would be ideal to fuel your hand, but if you don't find a piece of interaction, you could really be in trouble against the Corey Steel Cutter.
Sleight of hand being played here by Nakamura. Corey Steel Cutter and a land are the cards I believe he's looking at from the sleight of hand. Storm Chaser's Talent, Stock Up and Opt, I believe, are the cards that he's looking at in an actual hand. So one of these cards is going to be added here in just a moment. Nakamura's trying to figure out which one it's going to be. If you're Ian Robb and rooting for him at home, the hope is that this turn doesn't get too bad for him. But given the options that Nakamura's looking at, it looks like it's going to be a pretty tough turn once Ian actually gets to untap and keep moving forward.
Yeah, the fact that the Corey Steel Cutter here is being put in that awkward spot of being the potential second step, meaning that Shuhei can't get a trigger from it this turn and can't get a trigger from it on Ian's turn because of the mana situation, means that Ian has as close to a reprieve as you can ask for in this spot. So I think in Shuhei's seat, it actually does make sense to take the land here just to be able to do more.
Sure, there's a Storm Chaser's Talent making Otter pass the turn back. So Corey Steel Cutter, see you later. Nakamura has made his choice, and now we're going to head back Ian Robb's way. Maybe a deep sigh of relief there as there's a Corey Steel Cutter. Let's see if there's some sort of response here from Nakamura. This is going to be a point of damage. That will be an opt.
No. 1 second.
And you see Ian very quickly stop Shuhei, and now the opt is going to resolve. So top card becomes the bottom one. New card coming here for the Hall of Famer.
Shuhei looking for a Spell Pierce or something here, hoping to do that.
Push Otter, bargaining this. Trigger bargain, or trigger both these.
All right, so towards the tower, bargain. Going to sacrifice the Storm Chaser's Talent, scry 1. You see the 2 monks from the Steel Cutters, plural, are now on the battlefield. And that card is going to stay on top here for Ian. And Shuhei said, I'm out of here. So there you go. Corey Steel Cutters are going to run away with that one there for Ian Robb, who was able to overcome a bit of a glutted hand, start playing multiple spells, and more importantly, multiple Steel Cutters in a turn. And we are headed to our third and final one.
Yeah, I think both games, what we've seen the emphasis being on is choke points, players being a little stuck on whether their opponent is able to take advantage of them or not. Game 1, it was Shuhei being stuck. Ian also got stuck and wouldn't be able to resolve a VV to push through that pressure. That game, Ian was stuck and Shuhei was just playing his draw spells but not hitting the things he needed in the sequence that he needed them.
This will be a Drake Hatcher and a passing in the turn. Shuhei did keep a 1-lander, but it was able to find a land off of the sleight of hand. The Thematic Barrage is going to take care of the Drake Hatcher. You see a Storm Chaser's Talent come before that there for Ian Robb. So now let's see what Shuhei's going to do on his third turn. It's Corey Steel Cutter, Storm Chaser Talent. Ain't this a hoot? So, prowess creatures aplenty. One of them's a monk, one of them's an otter. They attack all the same. This will be an attack here for 2 for Shuhei.
Just got to appreciate how briskly these players are playing.
Well, I think it's kind of a prerequisite. If you're going to play blue-red, you have to be able to flick the cards in your hand back and forth very quickly and be able to take game actions very, very fast. You know, someone who does that very well, Brian Kibler, I think he may be the best blue-red prowess player in the world, given the prerequisites that are necessary.
The best hand shuffler of all time.
Hard to argue.
The hand shuffling Hall of Famer.
That's right.
First ballot.
I know.
Yeah, and I think part of that is definitely an understanding, even though we have not seen it in these games, is that this matchup can go late.
It can.
We can get to a point where both players have multiple answers to what the other one is presenting, and the board stabilizes, and suddenly we're playing this resource trade battle back and forth, and it's not one person getting overrun. Right? So an understanding of that means that even though they're in the third game, they don't want to be in a position where they're picking up a draw here at this point in the tournament.
Absolutely. Copy into the Flood Maw now. It's going to bounce the Drake Hatcher. Steel Cutter's going to trigger. The die is going to count the prowess triggers. And let's see if Shuhei's got a little follow-up here. He's thinking about a little something. I'm going to start with a little attack here. Looks like it's going to be 8. Ian Robb is going to torch a tower. More than you bargained for.
Yeah, I believe that monk only has the power from the Steel Cutter. It does not have the prowess triggers. It was the last thing created off of the Steel Cutter. So that prowess die is only representing for those two creatures, meaning Shuhei could not save the monk using the abraded hand.
Correct. All right, so this scry is going to go to the bottom there off of the bargain from the Torch to the Tower. We're going to head back in Robb's way, who does have an otter in play. The follow-up now is an abrade to take care of the Corey Steel Cutter. That's going to work. And there's an attack with the otter for 2. Not going to be blocking very well. And now there's a Drake Hatcher past the turn back. We're going to head back over to Shuhei. I think there's a stock up in hand along with an abrade and I think a 5th land too. So stock up is step number 1. The Hall of Famer is going to take a look at 5 cards. 2 are going to be headed to the grip. The other 3 are going to go to the bottom. Looks like there's plenty of good options there, partner. And opt among them.
Yeah, picking up the land was nice because it made sure that Shuhei could feel safe playing the stock up, knowing that even if he somehow doesn't find a land, he would be able to deal with the Drake Hatcher and push across maximum damage.
So 6 damage just come across there, and one thing about these prowess decks, they don't block particularly well, so this will be a Thundering Falls here from Ian, and now it'll be an op top card. Has become the bottom card. Take a little look-ski. Looks like maybe a Torch the Tower. It's going to be an Into the Void Maw to take care of that. Torch the Tower will take care of that, and an attack for 4. So perhaps Robb is turning the game around, though Nakamura does have a copy of Storm Chaser's talent on the battlefield, and it looks like he may have just drawn a good one from that reaction. Oh, you've seen this card? You heard about this thing? You heard about this thing?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Corey Steel Cutter, ops, trigger that. Got a monk. Top card becomes the bottom card, mystery card, in for 2. Looks like into the Flood Maw. And Chivalry for what's left over. So just 1 card here from Shuhei. There's the attack with the otter. Ian will just simply pass the turn back. Life total is 4 to 12. And we got into the Flood Maw. Yep, that's going to do it. Storm Chaser's talent on the battlefield is going to be more than good enough. Shuhei Nakamura is going to win this prowess mirror. Going to make Ian Robb, at least for the moment, disappear. A Hall of Famer is 1 step closer to another top 8.
It really is a delight to watch Shuhei play. You saw just how methodical that match was, and at every point he understood exactly which resources he needed to take his advantage and push it forward, and it was just clinical. Good stuff.
Not his first time playing that style of deck. Certainly not going to be his last. And, of course, this weekend. Very much in top 8 contention. Is one of Magic's very best. We take a short break. When we do come back, it's Ken Yukuhiro, a fan favorite, against David Rood, a former Pro Tour champion. More of round number 12 right after this. Hey, welcome back. It is Pro Tour Final Fantasy here from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. There's also, 19,000 of our closest friends playing Magic at MagicCon Las Vegas as well. Just a couple of shots of the sights and all the fun that we are all having here. Also, new MagicCon schedule has been announced, and there's MagicCon coming later this year in Atlanta. There's so much more Magic to be played over the next handful of years, but for today, and what's in front of us right now, two of our favorites. One, David Rood, a former Pro Tour champion. Another, Ken Yukuhiro, top eight Pro Tours and also loves to brew.
Yeah, Ken Yukuhiro is a player that anytime we see, he just is either bringing his own deck to a tournament or his own take on an existing deck, and either way, it's always delightful to watch.
You see 7 top finishes here for Ken, the lesser-known Rood with 2, but if you're a Magic historian and have been playing for much too long like I have, remember David Rood winning a Team Pro Tour, if memory serves, in Atlanta alongside the one and only Gabriel Nassif.
Yep.
The
It
master.
was their third test time.
Oh, why you gotta put me on the spot like that? I think it was Gab saying.
It was Gavin.
Yes, let's go.
All right,
Let's go.
all right. Still got it.
39 never looked so good, baby. All right, Ken Yukuhiro, 9-2, playing mono red. Gonna start things off with a very problematic mouse. It is the Heartfire Hero. For David, it's a Spirebluff Canal, and we'll see what his prowess deck is up to in this particular game. This matchup is kind of like what we just watched a minute ago, but the mice package can kill you very, very quickly, and things can get out of control as here comes Heartfire Hero into the red zone for 1.
Yeah, that was a charring bite coming out the Omi side of the Twin Moss Stormbrood to take care of the Drake-Hatcher and push the hero through. The most important part of this matchup, at least in game 1, is definitely the existence of Magebane Lizard.
That's the one.
That's the evolution that we've seen the mono-red decks move through, specifically to try to target this prowess deck. Ken's build only has 3 of the lizards in the main deck, not the 4 that we've seen a lot of people running. But importantly, the counter evolution of that from the other side, the Is It Prowess side, has been the inclusion of Roaring Furnace, and that is not one that Dave has, at least in the main deck.
Looks like on a Manifold Mouse here. That's going to target the Heartfire Hero. Valiant trigger, put a +1/+1 counter on that, and then simply pass the turn back. So David Rood is going to start, looks like his 4th turn at 19 against Mono Red. There's a lot to like about that if you're an Is It Prowess player. So step number 1 is going to be a sleight of hand. And Rood will take a look at those top 2 cards. One will be coming to the grip. The other one's he's going to let it rip and send that to the bottom of the deck. So, sleight of hand is done resolving. And let's see what comes up next.
I do believe Ken has a pair of mountains in hand. His last card, not getting a great look at it. As you can see, Ken is playing with very beautiful cards in every opportunity that he gets, but it does also make them a little harder to see.
Well, there's at least one mountain over there. So we will find out soon enough what Yukuhiro is up to. As Rood continues to think through his turn, do remember the 12 wins is the name of the game here at this Pro Tour. If you get to 12 wins before round number 16, you are into our elimination rounds. Now, if you get that 12th win in round 16, things get a little more difficult. Tiebreakers get involved. It's kind of that messy stuff that ultimately shakes itself out. But I like to try to make it easy. If you can get your 12th win before round number 16, Sunday, that's where you'll be headed.
Yeah, and the sooner you can, of course, get yourself in that position to start vying for your 12th win, the better it will be for you, because the sooner you reach it, you lock in your seeding essentially for the top 8.
That is correct.
When play draw matters, and in a format like this, play draw can matter quite a bit. You want to try to get that first, second seed if you can going into the top 8.
I think that's a good idea. It looks like Drake-Hatcher is going to come across. That is a Monstrous Rage. It's going to be targeting that Drake-Hatcher. Another Prowess trigger as well. I'm on a Monstrous roll too, so decent amount of damage is going to be done here. And now some incubation counters are going to be placed onto the Drake-Hatcher.
+1 counters, right? Yeah, so rip maybe black. Okay.
And just want to make sure exactly what those counters are going to be. Remember, incubation counters, not +1/+1 counters. The difference is quite important, one could argue. So clarity is key, and these players have taken care of that. As we're going to head back over to Yukuhiro.
And 6 is the magic number in terms of damage you want to deal, incubation counters you want to get on Drake-Hatcher in a turn, considering it does cost 3 counters removed to make a Drake. So if you can get 6 on that first attack and make 2 Drakes, the amount of pressure that you're presenting is significantly ramped up.
Screaming Nemesis, and then a Manifold Mouse trigger targeting the Heartfire hero is what the actions are here for Ken. Now, as we can get a clear look, Ken's got 2 lands in hand.
Yeah.
We know that for sure. David doesn't know that, though. And so when you see a player attack you like this, with 1 single red mana open, oh, what could it be, Monty?
Well, I think Dave is, just glancing to the top of his graveyard. There's a certain card there that is a flashing reminder of the possibilities. This Monstrous Rage is just blinking at Dave and being like, remind, I exist. I'm right here. You just played me.
Makes blocking very, very, very difficult. Now here is an attempt at a block. It'll be the Thundertrap Trainer that's going to jump in front of the Hardfire hero, so a little bit of damage will be dealt. Rood's going to fall down to 16, and now here come a couple of Drakes on the end step for David, who's going to untap those 4 lands and take a draw step here.
Yeah, I think one of the cards in Dave's hand is a copy of Torch the Tower. Can't get a good look at what the other 2 are, but Torch the Tower is going to be pretty nice here. It does mean that Dave can continue pushing damage and feeling safe about it.
Time to stock up. Top 5 cards. Take a little look-ski. 2's coming. Looks like Monstrous Rage among them.
Yeah, those were some gas. Sleight of Hand, Monstrous Rage, VV, and another Drake Hatcher alongside land. So a lot of choices for what David Rood can do in this spot. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Monstrous Rage definitely get picked up. After that, honestly, I don't think you need another Drake Hatcher or VV to win this game, so maybe just Sleight of Hand to make sure that you don't suddenly run out of gas. Pressure being the name of the game here means that you want to use the resources you have in play rather than having backup to replace them, because this mono red aggro deck doesn't do a great job of clearing off the board particularly.
Well, stock up is done resolving. There's an island, there's a sleight of hand, another prowess trigger here for David. Looks like Torch the Tower.
Towers.
Plural, those are the options. Well, that makes it pretty easy.
The illusion of choice, as it were.
Yes.
Yeah. David Rood can push an extra point of damage through here if he would like, just to fire off that Torch the Tower. Bud could also play it a bit more safe if he wants and leave it up for the potential Monstrous Rage on Yukuhiro's turn, considering that should at this point be the only way they could feasibly win the game.
Yeah, hard not to like this spot right now if you're Rood.
Yeah, 3 damage getting through means that you get 3 more incubation counters for the Drake Hatcher.
And there is Torch the Tower. I'm going to bargain via the roll.
If your plan is to stack the roll anyways, it doesn't matter. You're not missing out on any prowess damage. So you get your damage through, you get your incubation counters on, and then you do that.
And that's very nice play there from Rood, who's sitting at a very healthy 16 to Yukuhiro's 7.
And most importantly, removed the Heartfire hero from the board. That was the problem creature, or the most problematic of the creatures from Yukuhiro. That was the one that getting double strike on that could be quite large. Right now, Ken's option is to give double strike to the Manifold Mouse or activate the Soulstone Sanctuary, neither of which are looking particularly appealing in this spot.
Very difficult spot here for Yukuhiro, who is pretty far behind, as Rood has had a very nice draw. And while Ken did get this game started off quite well with Hardfire Hero and Manifold Mouse, it's been pretty lacking since then.
Yeah, coming into the matchup, we did highlight just the importance of Magebane Lizard, and that's notably been the card that Ken has not found this game, which means that Dave has had pretty free reign to just play all the spells that he wants and make sure that he's never out of cards, never in a bad spot, never going too low on HP, and can continue having free reign on the game.
And there's a Screaming Nemesis on defense, and that kind of sums up exactly how this game is going right now for Ken Yukuhiro. A creature that prefers to be attacking, given the haste keyword, will not be doing that here. So this is a turn where I think we're going to see Rood cast a handful of spells. A lot of mana available, 5 of it to start the turn. Going to kick things off with an opt, ideally to find another spell here in just a moment.
Yeah, and I do believe there is another copy of Torch to the Tower in David Rood's hand as well, if I remember that correctly from what I've seen. So, very good position for him.
All right, top card becomes the bottom one there for Rood. New card coming. It's a secret to all of us except for David. I think it might not be much of a secret anymore, as there's a sleight of hand. So take a look at the top couple, an island amongst those cards. Other cards coming that way.
I do love when the hand shuffling meta gets creative. If your hand's not big enough, you pick up your lands and start shuffling those.
Oh,
you
yeah.
need to play with something, right?
You can't just put your hands
Right.
down
Right.
and
No,
not
no.
be grabbing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. New contender.
Us Magic players, I tell you what. 4 damage going to come through in the air via those Drakes. Drake Hatchling, which again is a 4-power creature because of the 2 prowess triggers. Excuse me, 3-power creature because of the prowess triggers. Is going to win the battle against the Screaming Nemesis, but will win the war.
Yeah, Ken has to decide where he's sending the damage here.
Bang. Drake Hatcher down. Up next.
Have you heard of this card?
Yeah, I think that's another. Is that another Drake Hatcher?
I believe it is.
Yeah, just a different one.
You heard of this one?
Okay, well, that's going to get the job done. So, David Rood is going to win game number 1 here over Ken Yukuhiro. The Canadian is 1 game win away from win number 10 and getting 1 step closer to that magical number of 12. Both players going to start with 7 cards here this game. It looks like Ken is going to start things off with Hardfire Hero.
All right. All-important test. I see 2 copies of the Lizard in Ken's hand. So we are doing significantly better on Ken's side than the previous game where there were 0 lizards to be found. Notably, of course, Ken does bring in the 4th copy of the Mage Main Lizard. You do want to have access to the maximum in this matchup. The question of whether you maximize or not in the main deck is, of course, how much prowess do you expect to face? How much are you hedging against? Okay, this prowess meta is not going to be 42% of the field. It's only 20%, and suddenly you have a card that's not looking stellar elsewhere.
Mage Main Lizard is going to come across into the red zone right now. Here comes the 1/4. Last turn we saw Rood play Storm Chaser's talent, which of course generates that 1/1 otter with prowess. We'll see if Rood wants to do any blocking here, perhaps. If there's any sort of work to be done.
Yeah, if David Rood has something like Monstrous Rage, for example, could be considering going for a block plus use here. Very risky into red mana, but Desperate Times, Desperate Situations depends on whether David thinks Ken has something or whether David thinks he can beat this Mage Main Lizard should it be on the battlefield. And if he can't, then Desperate Times call for desperate measures and you take any opportunity to clear off a Lizard.
Yes, indeed.
It would be surprising to me for Ken to make this attack. For Ken confirming that David is thinking.
Oh, yeah. There's some thinking
anything
going on here. There's your block. Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think this may be another copy
It's
of
got to be
Torch
Torch the Tower then? Yeah, Torch and Bargain.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Ken says take 1, and then there's the Monstrous Rage.
That's tough.
To keep the
That's
alive.
tough.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. Of course, very smart for David to not do that during combat, as the trample would have pushed a lot more damage through there.
Yes.
But all the same, the end result is you have not cleared off this Mage Main Lizard.
Yes. So Mage Main Lizard, the very problematic permanent, is on the battlefield's turn now. Here is Vivi. Don't think we're going to see.
Goes Vivi.
Yeah, we're not going to see that one. Nice little suplex. Trip to Suplex City for Vivi. And now here comes the Mage Main Lizard in for a couple points of damage.
Yeah, notably, Mage Main Lizard is a symmetrical effect.
It is.
Doesn't often feel that way.
Yeah.
It is symmetrical, so Ken does take a damage from casting that suplex, but I think he's okay with it.
Well, Vivi. Vivi not going to take a trip to Suplex City, perhaps. Now, going to need a little extra work because it does have an additional point of power and toughness given the op that has been played. So, Rood trying to do the one thing that we have seen so many players this weekend, Monty, do very effectively, which is untap with VV, and then, well, then we know what happens, and it's really bad for the opponent.
It is really bad, unless they have 2 copies of Magebane Lizard on the battlefield.
That is true.
How many spells can David Rood cast here?
Well, you know what?
Take
Let's
2.
put it to the test. We're going to start things off with a sleight of hand. So, Rood's going to fall down to 11. Take a look at the top 2 cards. One of them will be coming with here in just a moment.
Yeah, mathematically, David cannot fight through these Magebane Lizards using just 1 VV.
No, it's not that easy.
It really is not. Once again, it deals damage equal to the number of non-creature spells they've cast. So it gets more painful the further down you go.
There's some mana. There's a Drake Hatcher. There's a land. Okay, so modest. VV not running out of control, and that means Magebane Lizard's not running out of control now. There's a land finally for Ken. I'm sure Ken has been wondering where the heck is that third land.
But what about
this game pretty easy?
What about a third Magebane Lizard?
And a Hired Claw.
Yeah, we are quickly approaching the point where David Rood just cannot cast non-creature spells.
Correct. Correct. And it is worth remembering here, folks, as well, that give the main Mage Lizards text. Very hard for a Izzet Prowess deck to work through. So you might be wondering, is there a way for Izzet Prowess to cleanly get these things off the battlefield, maybe all at once? Some sort of pyroclasm or super style effect? And the answer is no.
Yeah, that's not there.
No. Going wide against this deck is what a lot of players have done with a lot of success here this weekend. Now, we don't normally see it with triple Magebane Lizard, but that's where we are right now.
Right, and notably, David's specific build of prowess has not come overly prepared to deal with Magebane Lizard. He doesn't have any copies of the Roaring Furnace in his sideboard, for example. So ways to clear off a Magebane Lizard, really not there in David's deck. I believe he does have access to 1 copy of Twin Moss Stormbrood in the sideboard. That's one way. Of course, that is a card that you can draw multiple times, as it is an omen that you are casting. But even with that said, that's just 1 card.
Another copy of Hired Claw. Now just a passing of the turn. Remember, Hired Claw's ability doesn't really come up that often, but put a +1/+1 counter on Hired Claw. Activate only if opponent lost life this turn, and only once each turn. That could come up here because of those Magebane Lizards.
Sure can.
Let's see what the follow-up is here now. This is a really weird game that we worked ourselves into. Suplex City on the Drake Hatcher.
Take 3.
Boom. Yeah, well, you know. Gotta do what you gotta do, right?
And I believe the last card in Ken's hand is one that we haven't seen that often this weekend, but one that could be very important. It's a self-destruct.
Okay, okay. See that one more so in Finn Limited than anything else, but self-destruct is a pretty interesting and powerful card. You see where the blocks could be. Oh, Ken's lining it up. I love when players do this, trying to assume that players are going to block a certain way. Now here's the attack. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, I think Ken is trying to get this game to a position where David literally cannot cast a spell anymore.
Yep.
That is the lock that you are trying to get to, is if David's deck just has to use his creatures, that is not a good place to be. This deck just doesn't really function.
Yep.
So as soon as Ken can get the game to a position where David is essentially a 3 or going towards that, that's a great position to be in.
Damage. Take 4. Rood down to 5. Hired Claw. Gonna bite the dust. You see the score here, 14-5. And again, Ken can kind of make that attack because David's inability to cast spells is very real right now. So, looks like the Drake Hatcher, with all its vigilance, is going to come in here. And does get a couple of, I think it's look at 1 counter here. There we go.
Yeah, Ken pointed that out. Very sportsmanlike to let your opponent have his trigger. And, you know, I think Ken is going to win this game just purely out of inevitability now, because he can just go to combat and make the same attack again, and David can block 2 things and take 2, and all of that will happen, plus a 3rd damage from the Hired Claw attacking, all the lizards attacking. But most importantly, this is the point where David can no longer cast any spells, and at any point, Ken does have the self-destruct to finish the game by going to David's face. So inevitability being the name of the game, and Magebane Lizard really showing off why it is the make-or-break card of this matchup.
Yeah, one is nice. 3 of them, well, that's going to be really hard for Is It Prowess to beat. So we are all tied up here and going to head to a third and final one here between Yukuhiro and Rood. Our top player, David Rood, will be on the play. Remember, this win for either one of these players, as they are 9-2, is very crucial to their top 8 dreams. So a 10th win gets you 2 away from that magic number. Falling down to 9-3 means you don't have much leeway to give.
Yeah, definitely not. And neither of these players strangers, of course. Ken does have many previous top 8s. David, not as many, but does have that win decades ago at this point.
Yeah, it was a long time ago in Atlanta that he did win that team tournament with Massey from Gabson.
Yeah, I believe this was a mulligan to 6 for David, as we do see those opening hand numbers. Ken got to keep the full 7, and you can see why when he gets to start things off with the turn 2 Magebane Lizard.
And there's a Lizard. Here comes a Otter. Going to just get in for 1 point of damage here. Let's see what David's follow-up is going to be. Just going to pass the turn back after that third mana. No stock up, no nothing, at least for right now.
Yeah, no stock up, no VV is a bit of a feels bad situation now.
This is a Screaming Nemesis. This is going to resolve, and now here come the Knuckleheads. So the Lizard and the Nemesis are going to come into the red zone here. Is this perhaps into the Flood Ball? It is.
Yeah. 18. Yeah. Oh.
I'm going to pass the turn back. So let's head back over to Rood.
This is not the type of hand you want if you're David.
Well, we don't know all the contents, to be fair, but it is not a creature-centric start.
Right.
That much we know for sure.
And it's not putting on as much pressure as you would want. Because your game plan against this Lizard is either you're going heavy on the creatures and you don't need to cast that many spells for it to have impact, or you're putting on so much pressure that, yes, you're taking some damage, but your opponent is taking a lot more. When your opponent is at 19 life and their Lizard is surviving, because as previously mentioned, your build of the deck just really can't deal with this Lizard cleanly, that's really problematic.
Just an island on passing the turn there from Rood.
You know, it has to be mentioned, this is not the build of Is It Prowess that we saw from Chris Baker yesterday, where there's a lot of flash coming out. We can see Enduring Curiosity coming out on the end step. None of those things are happening here.
And here comes Screaming Nemesis again. Will it be 4 damage? It's going to be a Torch to the Tower. Oof. It's a tough way to do it. Oh, boy.
Let's calm down.
Oh, no. The rage was monstrous here for Ken Yukuhiro, blowing that Torch of the Tower out of the water. My goodness. Ken with mono red. That, folks, is the power of Magebane Lizard.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to the point where Ken was going to send some damage to the face from that Nemesis.
Yeah.
Dave was like, yeah, you got me.
Yeah, Dave's draw there, you saw he kind of unveiled his hand at the end, which is another land, another copy of Stormchaser's Talon. His hand did not line up particularly well against Magebane Lizard, and that is why some players are playing mono red here this weekend. Remember, everybody kind of knew coming in that Is It Prowess was going to be a very played strategy, and Magebane Lizard is a way to go about beating that deck, especially if it does show up in multiples like we saw in game number 2. We're all done. We're going to take a little short break here. We're going to head over to the news desk. More standard, which means more Is It Prowess, more VV, and maybe some green decks like Insidious Roots coming up. Don't you go anywhere.